So this is episode 2, where we're going to be designing our toggle in Figma. And just a quick reminder of what we're going to be creating. So we're going to be designing something in Figma that looks something like this. We're also going to make it an interactive component just so we can learn that process of how to actually create animations for components within Figma that we can then use throughout our designs. But then we're going to take that into Adobe After Effects and we're going to be creating an animation like this really liquid toggle. This is actually 2 animations, so we've got an on animation and then we've got an off animation. So it's transitioning from the default state to the enabled state and then the enabled state to the default state. So when we export this as a Lottie file, we can either export it like this one big animation with the 2 kind of states involved, just to kind of demonstrate what we've got. But we could also just export this portion so that we've got an animation for enabling our toggle, and then we could also export this for disabling it. We can even look at things like doing a hover. So if I just open up this hover here, we could have a hover state. So when you're hovering over it, we could have this kind of liquid effect here. We'll look at this later in the tutorial series. For now, we're going to be focusing on creating the liquid toggle. So we're going to start today. This episode is going to be fully in Figma, and we're going to be creating a toggle that matches what we want to make in After Effects. So we're working a little bit backwards here, because usually you wouldn't have this already created in After Effects, but just for the sakes of this tutorial, we're going to be recreating this in Figma so that then we can use this as a reference for when we, in the next episode, come to create this in After Effects. In fact, it might not be the next episode. The next episode might be how we export from Figma into After Effects, and then the following episode will probably be animating in After Effects. So let's get started. Okay, so the first thing we want to do when we're creating this is we want to pay kind of close attention to our toggle here. So this toggle button, or the handle, is actually, it's a circle. So it looks like a circle, it is a circle. But if we look over here on the left, it's actually a rectangle. And the reason we're creating it as a rectangle is so that we can manipulate it here, like this. But we might be able to do it as a circle still. There's a few options here. So what we want to be doing is looking at the shapes and what we can do with the Bezier curves. So let's just draw a circle real quick, or an ellipse. Here we go. And if we click in, we've actually got these handles where we can adjust things. And if we hold down the shift, we can manipulate both sides at the same time. And like so, we can both sides at the same time. So in this example that I created in another video that I'll hopefully remember to link to above, we did this from a rectangle. And the reason I did it from a rectangle when doing it inside here was because I wanted to create these shapes. And I'll show you just quickly what I did. I created a rectangle. Let's make it an even number, so it's 1 by 1. And then I had the radius, so it created a circle. So we've actually got a rectangle here, and if we click inside it, we don't have those handles that we have, but we can manipulate this shape still. But in this tutorial, we're actually going to be doing it from an ellipse, because we want to be doing it from these handles like this, which is how we're going to be doing it in After Effects. So even though previously, just to summarize, even though previously this was done using a rectangle, in this series we're going to be doing it as an ellipse, and the reason is so that we can have these smooth curves for creating our liquid UI and our liquid toggle. So let's get started. Whoops. Okay, there we go. So the first thing we want to create is this toggle background here, and if we click into one of these shapes here, we can see that it's 36 by 20. But let's make it a bit bigger so we've got something better to work with inside After Effects. So I'm going to times that by 10, so we're going to have 360 by 200. It's just a much bigger thing. As it's going to be a vector at the end, it doesn't matter what the size is, so long as the scale is, so long as like the portions are like correct. So we want to make sure that we could look at, for example, Apple's toggle and look at the width and height of that and make sure it is the same, but then we can scale it up, is the point I'm trying to make. So we can work with it a lot easier. So I'm going to create a new page here, and I'm going to create a rectangle. And just to go back quickly to have a look what size it was 36 by 20. So I'm going to times that by 10. Let's just close that. What was it? I've already forgotten. 36 by 20. So that would be 360, which I'm actually really close already, by 200. And then I'm going to lock that. So that is now our aspect ratio. So it's 360 by 200. We could even double that. So if we wanted to, we could times that by 2, and then we've got 720 by 400. In other words, what I'm saying is we're scaling it up, but we're keeping that aspect ratio the same. So we've got a nice big size to be working with in After Effects. But if we were to scale it down to 36, you can see it's 36 by 20. So that when we actually come to use it in the app, it is the right size. Okay, so let's have another look. So what we've got here on this toggle is we've got that 36 by 20 and we've got a nice round corner. Okay, so our height is 400, so our corners need to be half that, so 200. So there we go. Now we've got this toggle background. Let's name it toggle background, so we know what we're working with. Next, we want to be creating that toggle handle or button. And if I have a look here, just for reference, it's 16 by 16, so that would be 160 by 160. And then if you remembered, we doubled it again. So let's do 16 by 16 and lock it at that. We have an ellipse, that's correct. And then we can do 160 times 2. There we go, 320 by 320, perfect. And let's change that color to white. There we go, and then we put it on, we've got a toggle build. So let's group that together and call that toggle. And then we're going to add a / and put default, because that is our default state. And we just need to make sure that we name this as well. I'm going to call this toggle handle. Okay, so let's duplicate that with a Command D, move it down, and let's make our enabled state. So we just need to move this to the other side, like so. And then we want to change our background color to something else. So you could play around with what you want to have your background color. I wouldn't suggest a red, because that's usually associated with a warning or an error. So usually you would go with a kind of a green or a blue, depending what your brand colors are and what you want to do. For this example, we're going to go with, could go with a purple. Let's go with a purple because it's nice. It's a nice color. Okay, so we've got our 2 toggles. We need to make sure we rename this one enabled or active, whichever you want to call it. I'm going to call it enabled. Okay, so what we could do now is just do a quick animation between the two, and let's have a look at that. So if we press Shift E or click prototype up here, we can, so I have forgotten to do something. We need to add these into frames, else we cannot animate it. So what I'm going to do first is I'm going to turn these into components. Create a component set. There we go, we've got our toggle now. And inside our toggle components, I'm going to animate inside here instead. So just do a quick one there. On click, we want to change it to property enabled. So that's, if we click the default, it's going to change to enabled. We don't want to do it instantly, but for the sake of this tutorial, we're going to start with instant, and we're going to do the same going back that way. So on click, change the default state instantly. Let's have a look at that. So what we need to do is just pull in that toggle from the library. Here we go. So here's the toggle that I've just created. Going to add a frame so we can actually preview it. And then we're going to so here we go, here's our toggle. If we click it, it's instantly going to change. So that's really boring. This is what we currently see in a lot of apps. It's just an on and off state. So what we're looking to do in this series is create something more interesting. So let's do that now, but only inside Figma for now. Okay, so here's our toggle. Let's call this toggle step 1. And if we create a new one and call it toggle step 2, we can then tweak these. So we're going to use the smart animate. We're going to do a 300 milliseconds, and we're going to just do an ease out. Again, on click, smart animate, over 300 milliseconds and an ease out. We do have access to some curves here, which will be really useful when we come to After Effects, but for now we're just going to use an ease out. And as you can see, there's a little representation of that curve here. So it's a nice, there's no ease in, it just ramps up right at the beginning and then slowly ramps down. Let's have a look what that looks like. First I need to bring that toggle in. And there we go, toggle step 2. Again, we need to add a frame so we can view it. And then so now we can see there's actually a nice animation that Figma has created for us. So by clicking it, because it's an ease out, it will instantly start to move, but then it will nice and slowly ease out as it goes to the final point. And just to demonstrate that a bit more, we can have a look at playing around with these curves here. So we could do an ease in, ease out. And we just need to refresh that. In fact, I don't think we need to refresh it in Figma, but just for the sakes I have. So we can see it now has it's quite hard to see because it happens so quickly, but there is a slight ease in, so we can see it kind of starting slowly, ramping up really quick, and then slowing down towards the end. So that's quite nice too. Then we could look at maybe doing a custom curve. So if we go into here, go into custom, here is the curve, so you can see it's ease in, ease out. Let's say we want it to go backwards to start with, and then we want it to go past the point, its final point, and then go in like that. So we've got this weird custom now, and let's just do it one way. So let's have a look at that. Okay, yeah, so that needs reloading. Okay, so you could see there was a little bounce there and a little bounce at the end, and there isn't going back because we didn't touch that one. So that bounce is quite cool. Let's really exaggerate that bounce now. There we go. So we're really exaggerating it. Just need to go back here and reload again, just so you can update the curves. And now you can see that bounce is really, really obvious. So that's how you can play around with curves just between two keyframes. So essentially this is keyframe 1, this is keyframe 2. These are the two states, and then we're doing a curve between them. What we saw in here is that we've actually got multiple keyframes. So what we're doing in between these keyframes is we're actually manipulating the shape of the handle. And if we just quickly load that one. So again, this was using the rectangle example, but we are going to be using an ellipse in this case. But you can see we've got this nice bounce, and we're actually doing multiple keyframes. So let's design our multiple keyframe version, and let's close these. So we head back to this page. I'm not going to duplicate this, I'm going to just copy these two, and start down here. Okay, so we haven't got a component to begin with. So let's group it. And we're going to have a few different states here. So let's go to our end state and color that purple. So now we want to choose where our keyframe will be in between the two. So again, in this example, we're just doing a curve between these two. This time we're going to actually be manipulating the shape. And let's have a look at that. So I want to move this to the center. So we're actually moving, you can see across 3 keyframes, we've moved our handle from left to center to right. And let's have a look at how that looks. I'm just going to do these as frames rather than components while we're just playing around. And then I'm going to just quickly, so we're going to do on click, we're going to smart animate, we're going to do it, let's just do it linear. So linear is a straight line, there's no easing at all. And we're going to do the same one here, but we're going to do it this time instantly because we don't want to wait for an input. We want it to just instantly go. So we click here, it moves to this one and then instantly moves to this one over the time specified here and with the curve specified here, which in this case is linear, so there's no nice ease ins and ease out. So we can do that by going to after a delay and setting it to 1 millisecond. So that's the smallest we can go, I think. Let's have a look, see if we can go any smaller. 0.00, no, 1 millisecond is the smallest we can go, so that is essentially instant. And then we want to be able to, so we can only go one way here, because if we were to click back to this one, it wouldn't know which way to go. It would probably just instantly go back that way again. So what we need is another frame. Here, we'll delete that transition there. So this one will on click again, so we're going to wait for a user input, and we're going to leave it as linear again. We're going to again do a after a delay of 1 millisecond. So let's have a look what this looks like. And if at any point you're not following, drop a message in the comments below and I'll get back to you. Either we can jump on a call and go through it, or I can do a live stream and explain it in a bit more detail. So don't worry if you're not following along, but it should be relatively easy. Okay, so we can see what's happening here. We've got because of the flashing it's a little bit difficult to tell, but we've got a animation of it going from here to the center, and then it's instantly, without any input, moving to the right. So I'm going to click now, and then it instantly moves to that one. So that's how keyframes work. So what we want to do is now smooth this out and make this a bit nicer. So we're going to look at this one. We're going to divide that by 3. Let's make this much quicker. That should look much better already. And we're also going to have a ease in at this point. So it's going to ease in. We're going to have linear here. No, we're not. We're going to have an ease out here. So we've got a nice ease in, ease out over this 3 frames. And the same, we're going to do the same here. We're going to have a ease in and then an ease out. Let's have a look at that. Okay, so we can see it's a bit quicker. We still got that flashing, which we can probably solve by just renaming these all the same. Sometimes Smart Animate needs the names of each state to match, and that also goes for the subfolders. So as we see, We don't actually need these groups here, so we can remove these groups because they're inside a frame anyway. And let's have a look at that. And also I'm going to do a quick reload because a lot's changed there. So hopefully this will be a bit nicer. Yeah, there we go. We can see, because we've renamed it and made sure all those are the same between each state, it knows how to smart animate between them. So now we've got this really quite nice animation here using keyframes. So that doesn't look too different to what we had above here. And that was just animated between two. So why have we done 3 keyframes here? In fact, we've done 4 keyframes here. Well, what we're going to do now is we're going to manipulate the shape of this, which would be quite nice. So we're going to select our toggle handle or ellipse. We're going to double click so that we expose these handles. And I'm just going to pull this handle way out like that. And I'm going to do the same on this one. So this is called a stretch in animation. So as something's moving quickly, you can stretch it, and it's done a lot in cartoons. And as you're kind of stopping, if you think when you're driving a car and you stop really quickly, you get thrown forwards and you kind of squash forwards. Whereas when you accelerate, you kind of get pulled backwards and you feel like you're stretching. So that's kind of the principle here. And let's have a look at what this looks like. So we can already see it's already this kind of liquid effect. And Figma does a really good job of using the smart animate here, and it looks pretty good. So we've currently got our stretch in there, but we haven't got a squash. So what we need now is yet another state. So I'm going to move this up here, this one down here, and I'm just going to remove these ones, and we're going to add another keyframe in. And I'm calling them keyframes because I'm trying to prepare you for what we're going to be doing in After Effects. But by planning our states now. So actually I'm going to delete those again, and we're going to work from this state instead. I'm just going to delete that transition. So we've got a nice starting point. There we go. So now we've got 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 keyframes. And this essentially does our on and off animation. So what we want to do here is we want to move it to its final position, but then we're going to stretch it. Squash it even. We've done our stretch here, we're going to do our squash. So essentially, we're starting here. As it moves, it's getting stretched because there's a bit of velocity. As it hits the edge of the toggle, we're going to squash it kind of like this. And we're also going to pull the handles out so it changes the shape a bit. So if you think it's kind of hit this wall and it's been forced into this new shape because it's kind of this gelatinous or liquid material. And we're going to do the same on this side. So we're going to pull it in like so, and then we're going to extend this handle out. So it's got this kind of squashed look. Okay. And now all we need to do is add our transitions in. So add one here. This is going to be after the delay of 1 millisecond. We're going to do it linear. No, we're going to do it. Yeah, we're going to do it linear here. And this one we're going to do the ease out because that's the end of our animation. Ease out after delay 1 millisecond. So we might want to play around with this time number, how long it takes to kind of tween between the two frames. But for now we're going to leave it at 100. So same, we want to do it here. After delay, because we don't want any user input, we want it to do it instantly. And we're going to have that one linear. And this one, the final state, and we're going to have it as an ease out. After delay again, 1 millisecond. So hopefully you're getting the hang of this now. So this one, we're having a click, and it will instantly play through these keyframes to our endpoint, at which point it will wait for another click, and then it will go through these. So let's have a look at that now. I'm just going to do another refresh because we made quite a lot of changes there. Okay. So now we can see it does a kind of bounce at the end, which looks really good. So yeah, what you've done now is, if you've been following along, you have created a liquid toggle in Figma and animated it. You could then save this out as a component, like we did above. In fact, let's do that. So to do that, we want to do toggle default. So this is our default. This is our toggle default 2, toggle default 3, and this is our toggle, what did we call it here? We called it enabled. So this is our toggle enabled. In fact, I'm just going to copy and paste that instead of typing it each time. 2 and 3. So now if we create that as a component set, rename that toggle, let's call it liquid toggle, and pull it in, liquid, there we go. Need to make sure our starting state is default. We need to frame it, and there we go. So now we can actually pull this in and put this anywhere in our designs, and as soon as you go to play, no matter what design you've put it into, you will have that animated interactive component of a liquid toggle, which doesn't seem to be working, and let's find out why. Okay, so what's a bit annoying here is that because we've now created a component set, it's actually removed all those transitions that we created before. So this is annoying, but it's also an opportunity to practice what you've learned, and you can follow along with me again as we quickly go through. So just to make sure we know how we were doing it, this stage we were waiting for a user interaction, in this case a click. So on click, we're going to change to that one, smart animate, and we were going to ease in because it's the start of the animation, we're easing in. Next step, we're not waiting for an on click, we're going to do for an after delay, 1 millisecond, which is the smallest number we can go for. We're doing it linear because we're just trying to go through, we're thinking of this all as one animation. So you can think of this as the beginning of the curve. And lastly, let me just double check that I have set that one correctly. Yep, yep. And then lastly, we want to do an ease out. Again, after a delay, we don't want to wait for a user input. And we're going to do it linear, smart animate. And we're not going to do it linear, sorry, we're going to do an ease out because it's the end of our animation. Feel free to skip this section if you want to. Again, we're doing an on click because we're waiting for a user interaction. And we're going to do an ease in. Quickly now, we're not doing that, we're doing after a delay, we're going to do linear. Lastly, after delay, 1 millisecond, and we're going to do an ease out because it's the end of the animation, the end of the curve. Okay, so that's our interactive component built across 6 keyframes, and let's have a look now. Like I have mentioned in all my videos, I leave any mistakes in. I don't like to cut out mistakes because as you're following along or trying to recreate these, you will come across mistakes as you're learning, and it's good to know how to fix them. So if we click that, we've now got this lovely interactive component. So just to prove that you can now use that anywhere in your designs, I'm just going to mock up a really quick application. and I'm going to be pulling in this liquid toggle here. Just going to change the beginning state to default, and I'm going to put some text next to it. Call it setting 1. As you'll see, because this is huge, we've made this huge, so actually what we want to do is go and set our frame height first to something more reasonable, like, I don't know, 6. In fact, we can do one better than that. We can click A on our keyboard, and then we can just pull in a frame already. So here we got a iPhone 13 Pro Max. I'm going to pull this liquid toggle in. I'm going to lock it, and we're going to change it to 36. There we go. So just like that, we've now got a toggle at the correct size for what we want to do. In fact, I'm just going to 6 times 2, just for the point of demonstrating in this video so we can see it easily. I'm going to add setting 1. This isn't pretty, but it's just to prove a point. 2. Setting 3. Okay, so now if we go into our app, we can see that these all work individually as interactive components, and that's pretty cool. We did see, actually, when we first loaded this, and I'll do a reload, that it actually played the animation by itself, so that's something we've got to go fix. See how it went from that automatic on? That's because we're actually halfway through a state, so this is why it's important to set your correct state. And load it again. There we go, and now it's working. So you've essentially created a interactive liquid toggle in Figma that you can reuse anywhere in your apps, anywhere, which is really cool. So the next step is how we're going to bring this into After Effects. So how we're going to take what we've created here, wherever it is, what we've created here, and recreate it in After Effects. And there's 2 ways of doing this. We can either do it by using this as a guide and recreating it by eye in After Effects using the numbers we've got here, or we can actually send this directly to After Effects and work that way. We'll probably going to be doing recreating from scratch in After Effects rather than directly exporting, but I will show you how to do that in the next video. So thanks for watching. I really hope you appreciate this video and it was useful to you. Obviously this technique doesn't just apply to toggles. You could use this for anything, such as hamburger menus, closes, modals, anything really that can be animated in an app you can do using this technique. And you will also be able to use recreate in After Effects. The reason we're going to be creating this in After Effects is so that we can create these as production ready assets that we can give to our dev team or implement ourselves without any need for code, and we can have the animations be as polished as we like without having to recreate it in CSS. So stick around, make sure you subscribe to my channel and put the bell on so that you get notifications of all my upcoming videos. This is a free tutorial series on how to create UI motion graphics and motion designs, and I shall see you in the next video. Please leave any comments below if you have any questions, and I will see you next time. Thanks, bye.